Now, normally we don't do this, but because it is Jim's birthday, and we're in such a beautiful, really resort-like location here in Orange County. We're near Newport Beach. I thought I would take maybe just the next 2 hours or so, and I want to talk to you about something called vacation timeshare ownership. And no. Don't want you to worry about that. Are you ready for another ministry? All right, let's do it. We need to be contending for a generation. Join me in welcoming the president at Groundwire, Sean Dunn.
I was so lost. I felt completely alone, and I was alone. I wanted to kill myself, but I didn't want to die necessarily, if that makes sense. I just wanted the way that my life was going to completely stop, but I had no idea how. I have a tendency to hurt myself. I would cut, I would sleep around with guys that I knew did not care about me at all, and the few people that I knew cared for me, I would just completely push away and cut them off. Just very lonely because I wanted to control my pain. I was so tired. I was looking at Instagram and I saw this video, and normally I would just keep scrolling, but when I heard this girl's voice and saw the tears run down her face, it felt so real to me. I felt like I was supposed to go to this website and try to talk to someone or chat with someone. I logged on and this lady named Nancy answered.
I completely opened up to this random stranger. And she asked me if she could pray for me and if she could pray with me, and I was like, I don't know how. And so she helped me pray. I just felt truly new again.
I'm so blown away by what God's doing all over the world, but this is my mission field, the U.S. Our young people need to know that there's a God in heaven who loves them. And most of them are disconnected. They are not seeking. They're not reaching out. As a matter of fact, most of them, maybe some in your homes, maybe some of your grandkids, if you could throw that first slide up, that'd be great. They're running away from the church, not to it. And the church and Jesus are what truly holds the answers. And some people have come up to me and they say, it's hopeless. Even churches many times say, we don't know how to reach this generation. But I want you to know it is not hopeless. Your kids and your grandkids can be reached. And God is using us to do some amazing things. I'm blown away by what He's doing. After I share for 7 or 8 minutes here, I promise you, you will not look at us and think, man, you're pretty amazing. You'll look at and you'll say, God's doing something special. Let me tell you a little bit about the generations that we're working with. They need Jesus, but they don't even really know it. They're not pursuing Him. 71% are absolutely certain or fairly certain that God exists. 68% believe in heaven. The media would love to convince us that they are atheists, but they're not. 70% believe the American church is irrelevant. 65% rarely or never attend church. 39% have no religious affiliation. Please catch this. They are not atheists. They're what the Urban Dictionary calls apatheists. It's a real word in the Urban Dictionary. It stands for the younger generations that believe in God but ignore Him. Maybe you know these kids. Maybe they're in your neighborhood. Maybe they show up at your Thanksgiving table. And God is blessing us by showing us how to really engage these young people. Rachel was a young lady. She was looking at her Instagram feed one day, and she saw a commercial. She wasn't going to walk into a church. Our algorithms are targeting people that will not walk into a church. And she looks at this commercial, and it says, when life hurts, Jesus cares. She logs in. She's instantly connected to one of our volunteers. Some of our volunteer coaches are in the room tonight. They look a lot like you. Rachel reaches out, and she says, do I matter? And when I was reading this transcript, immediately I was captivated because I wonder how many people do I pass every day that would look at me if they were being vulnerable and say, do I matter? Do you see me? Man, I'm hurting. Can you hear my cry? Do I matter to you? The volunteer coach, by the way, they say a millennial's attention span is 12 seconds. That plays into our strategy on both what we say to them and how we respond to them. Our volunteers are taught you do not type in paragraphs. You'll lose them. You type in leading sentences. She said, you absolutely matter. You matter to me. I'm sure there's people in your life you matter to, but most importantly, and this is where every conversation has to go, you matter to God. Began to share some scriptures. One-liners, blasphemous, didn't even share the reference. Said, you were fearfully and wonderfully made. You're created in His image. You're the apple of His eye, the crown of His creation. He absolutely adores you. As a matter of fact, you matter so much that He made a way so you didn't have to spend eternity without Him. Has anybody ever shared that with you? She said no. She ended up accepting Christ on that chat. But I love the way the coach ended the conversation. She said, you came online and you asked me this question, do I matter? But now that you know what God sees when He looks at you, let me ask you, do you matter? She came on with a question mark. She ended with all caps on 3 exclamation points. She said, I do matter. When they understand who God sees when He looks at them, when they embrace that, they go through and God just pours out His love and it changes and transforms them, puts them on a direction where we can point them towards community. Let me share this with you, our 5-fold strategy. By the way, if you're going to reach people that nobody else is reaching, you have to do things no one else is doing. Okay? So our strategy is a little bit different. It's interrupt. We don't invite them because they might say no. And I'm ornery enough, I don't care if they want to hear about the God in heaven who loves them. I just want to plant that thought in their mind. Jesus cares about you. You're not doing this alone. So we show up on their social media devices. We show up in their entertainment. The same way a Jeep dealer pursues you when you want to buy an SUV, we show up in front of them. And we say, God loves you and He's thinking about you right now. We interrupt them 12, 15 seconds at a time, sometimes 30. After that, we communicate the gospel to them in multiple ways, but one of the things that makes us most unique is 24 hours a day. We have live volunteers. We tried dead ones, didn't work. We tried, I just always catch myself when I say that. I say live volunteers. Of course they're live. That's stupid. But we have these volunteers that are there ready to engage them and talk to them. When somebody's struggling, they don't need to read your thoughts. They need to connect with a person. So after that, we bring them to a place of commitment. I put this up here because some people think we're a suicide hotline. We're not. We understand we have to deal with their pain to get them to a place where we can talk to them about the Creator. But we bring them to a place of commitment. We have tools to teach them how to connect with God through spiritual disciplines and then move them towards community. A young man named Michael logged in and he said this. He said, hey, I'm an atheist, but I'm beginning to think that maybe God really does exist. By the way, I've learned something in my life that there's 2 types of atheists. There's the evangelistic atheist who thinks you're an idiot if you believe in God. But most of the people in our nation who claim to be atheists aren't. They're trying to avoid mom begging them to come to church. And they found if they tell mom and convince mom that they're an atheist, she'll stop harassing them. So they say they're an atheist. But then at that point, when they start to turn and recognize they need something vertical, where do they go? They can't reach out to mom because it opens up that floodgate. He reached out and said, hey, I'm an atheist. Keep seeing your content come up. It's kind of making me wonder if God really is there and if He really does care about me. Instantly connected to a volunteer after 5 or 10 minutes. The volunteer, just sensing the Holy Spirit was saying this, said, you know what? You're not an atheist. You know God's real, don't you? You've been running from Him, haven't you? And he goes, yeah, I have. He said, it's time? Think it's time? He said, yeah, I've been making him wait long enough. He turned and gave his life to Christ. I could share so many stories with you about that. God is doing some amazing things. The next 2 slides I'm going to show you are going to prove to you that God's at work. Because I'm telling you, it's blowing us away what God is doing in the U.S. George Barna said in January 2019, the average church in the U.S. sees 1 person a year come to Christ. Last year we saw 116,437. Your kids, your grandkids, the people that are in your neighborhood. Yesterday, we saw 502 come to Christ yesterday. Another statistic, and you might think this is sacrilegious, but denominations say that it costs them between $35,000, well, say that it costs them roughly $35,000 to see 1 person make a profession of faith. I read about 3-4 months ago, it costs over $1 million in the U.S. to see 1 baptism. Last year, we saw somebody come to Christ for $20.37. You might think that's sacrilegious. I'm not saying a soul's only worth $20.37. I'm saying if we're saying the right thing to the right people at the right time in the right way, they're going to respond, and it's going to show up on the charts. It's blown us away what God's doing. This year, our goal is to see 200,000 people come to Christ. We are on track for 160,000 right now. We just topped 121,000 yesterday. The needed goal to reach is 720,000. To gap that 40,000 that we need, we're seeing somebody come to Christ for every $18 roughly. We'll see that number reached if we reach that. We're on track for about $3 million right now this year. If we reach 3.7, we'll see that number. Maybe God will speak to you about being a part of that. Was sharing this in Houston. I had a guy walk up to me and he said, Sean, he said, I'm an entrepreneur. I just sold a business. I've invested all the money. I used to give. Can't give a lot. But he took two $20 bills and he tucked them in my pocket. He said, right now all I can do is that. He said, go get me 2 more. Just like Rachel, just like Michael. Maybe God will speak to you and you'll want to own some of these. Maybe you'll say, hey, I could do 1,000 of those or maybe more. Let me share with you next year. By the way, we have been growing like crazy, 50 to 80% year over year, but I believe that we honor God when we sit before Him. We say, God, give me a goal that is so big that it's only you if it's going to come to pass. And our goal next year is to see 450,000 people in the U.S. How many of you think it would be amazing to see 450,000 people in the U.S. come to Christ next year? Gen Zers and millennials who need Jesus. I'm telling you, it will affect us morally. It will affect our culture. To do that at $18 per commitment, we need to see $8.1 million. If that money's there, it's scalable, it can happen. We're trusting the Lord to bring in. We'll be faithful with whatever He brings us. But I'm telling you, it is not impossible to reach the younger generations. It's happening every day. Maybe God would ask you to be involved financially, and we definitely need some more people to talk to Rachel and Michael when they come calling. Talk to me about that if you're interested.
Let's thank Sean. That was tremendous. Thank you, Sean. We need good news. We need real change. You know, I was at Barnes & Noble the other night, one of the last remaining bookstores, and I asked the clerk, I said, where is your self-help section? And she said, well, I could tell you, but that would defeat the whole purpose. Some of these jokes will hit you on the way home, and you will bust up. It's great.